I never thought I would see the day when my own son would turn against me, yet here I was, standing alone in my living room, staring at the front door he had just slammed shut. "You ruined my marriage, Mom!" he had shouted, his face twisted with anger. I felt as if the ground beneath me had crumbled away, leaving me in a void of disbelief and sadness. I had only tried to protect him, to guide him, but somehow I became the villain in his story. The echo of his words haunted me, and I wondered how everything had spiraled out of control so quickly. But little did he know, I had a secret of my own, one that would change everything. As a divorced woman in my late 40s, I had faced my share of challenges. Emily, my daughter-in-law, had seemed like a dream come true for my son, Mark. She was bright, kind, and ambitious. But Mrs. Caldwell, our elderly neighbor, had warned me about odd visits to their house every Tuesday evening. At first, I brushed off her concerns, thinking that maybe it was just a friend or a new hobby. But soon I couldn't ignore the prickly feeling in my gut. One day, I decided to visit Emily and see for myself. That's when I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes puffy and red. "Mom, I'm just tired," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to believe her, but the nagging suspicion wouldn't leave me. In a bold move, I suggested, "Why don't you set up a camera, just to see what's really going on?" To my surprise, she agreed. I watched as she carefully installed the small camera, her hands trembling slightly. I felt an unusual mix of dread and anticipation as we browsed through the footage together days later. When the video revealed Mark and Lauren, my daughter-in-law's sister, my heart sank. They were laughing, whispering, and leaning into each other. The betrayal was undeniable. My mind raced. How could my son do this to his wife? Emily's face turned pale as she processed the evidence, and I knew I had to be the rock she could lean on. With newfound determination, Emily and I devised a plan. She had to maintain her composure while gathering more proof of their deceit. We spent late nights poring over text messages and call logs, piecing together the puzzle of their affair. It was painful, but Emily was resolute. "I won't let them destroy me," she said, with a fierce determination that made me proud. While she collected evidence, I took steps to help her regain her independence. I changed the locks on their house and ensured they couldn't access their joint bank account anymore. It felt liberating to know that she was taking control of her life, even in such dire circumstances. Tensions escalated as confrontations became inevitable. In one heated moment, Mark shouted, "You're being ridiculous, Em. It's not what it looks like." His denial infuriated Emily. "You don't get to lie to me," she yelled back, her voice steady despite the pain. Through these emotional exchanges, the manipulations and power plays in their relationship became painfully evident. As the court date approached, I found myself on the edge of panic. I took a deep breath as I watched Emily set the camera in the corner of the living room. The weight of the moment pressed down on both of us, but it was a necessary step. We had to know the truth about Mark and Lauren. I could feel the tension in the air, a mixture of fear and resolve swirling like a storm. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I asked, trying to gauge her resolve. Emily nodded, her mouth set in a firm line. "I need to know what's really happening. I can't go on living in uncertainty. I need evidence, and then I'll figure out what to do next." That was the thing about Emily. She had always been strong, but this situation was testing her in ways I could never have imagined. I watched her retreat to the kitchen, her shoulders squared, as if she were gearing up for battle. My heart ached for her. The following Tuesday came with an eerie anticipation. Mrs. Caldwell, our neighbor, had mentioned strange cars parked near our house every Tuesday. I couldn't ignore it, and neither could Emily. As the clock ticked closer to the hour we expected Mark and Lauren to arrive, I felt my palms sweat. Emily glanced at me. "What if they see the camera?" "They won't," I reassured her. "It's hidden well enough. Just keep calm." I kept my voice steady, but inside, I was a mess. I could only imagine what kind of betrayal my son was capable of, but the evidence would soon be in our hands. The sound of a key in the door sent a chill up my spine. I held my breath as Mark and Lauren entered, laughter dancing between them like a taunting melody. They didn't notice the camera, nestled discreetly among the decor, recording their every move. "Did you get the wine?" Mark asked, his tone casual, as if he were talking about shopping. "Of course. I wouldn't miss our little date night," Lauren replied, her voice dripping with affection. I exchanged a quick glance with Emily, who looked like she might explode. "This is it," I whispered. As they settled in, the reality of the betrayal began to wash over me. Moments turned into minutes, and our lives felt suspended in time. Each laugh, each shared secret, felt like daggers piercing my heart. Finally, it happened. They leaned in, whispering with an intimacy that was nothing short of sickening. "Can you believe she still thinks she's got him?" Lauren asked, a cruel smile on her face. Mark chuckled. "This is the best part. She's so naive." I felt Emily tense beside me, her fists balled tightly. "We have to do something," she hissed. I nodded slowly, knowing that we had more than enough to take action. That night, a whirlwind of emotions churned within us. After watching the footage, Emily decided to take charge. "I'm changing the locks tomorrow," she declared, with newfound determination. "I won't let them control me anymore." "Are you sure? It's a big step," I cautioned her. "Mom, it's time I stand on my own. I've been too passive for too long," she replied, her voice steady. The next day, we moved swiftly. Emily changed the locks and removed her name from their joint accounts. As I sat in the living room, the weight of the atmosphere clung to me like a thick fog. It had been days since Emily gathered the courage to confront Mark about what she discovered through the hidden camera, and the tension was palpable. The air crackled with unresolved emotions, and I could feel the distance growing between us, even as we sat side by side. "Mom, you don't understand how things have spiraled," Emily said, her eyes filled with both hurt and determination. "Mark thinks he can just sweep this under the rug and pretend everything is fine." "I do understand, Emily. I saw the way he looked at you when you confronted him," I replied softly. "He can't just erase the truth." "Yeah, well, he's trying," she said, shaking her head in frustration. "He thinks if he just ignores it, it'll go away." "That's not how life works," I said, trying to instill some sense of reality into the situation. "You need to stand your ground." Emily sighed, looking away. "What if I'm not strong enough?" she murmured. "You are stronger than you think," I assured her. "You have to take control, and that means making choices for yourself. The first step is to get rid of the joint account." She looked at me, her eyes wide with realization. "You're right, I need to do that." The sense of empowerment flickered in her expression. Over the next few days, Emily took charge. We changed the locks on the doors, ensuring that Mark wouldn't have access without her knowledge. It felt empowering to take these steps, yet tinged with a sadness I couldn't shake off. I was losing my son, the boy I raised with love and care, but I knew it was necessary for Emily's safety and independence. As Emily severed their financial ties, she shared with me her plans for the future. "I want to go back to school, Mom. I always wanted to study psychology. I could help others who are in similar situations." I smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope. "That's a wonderful idea. You have so much to offer." When she finally confronted Mark about what had been going on, I watched from a distance, my heart pounding. They sat at the dining room table, the tension hanging heavy in the air. Emily looked resolute, while Mark seemed to shrink into his seat, guilt etched on his face. "I know about you and Lauren," Emily stated firmly. "You need to stop pretending this is okay." "Emily, please, you're overreacting," he replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. "I'm not overreacting. I have proof. I saw you with her," she countered, holding her ground. The confrontation escalated, with emotions spilling over like a broken dam. As the argument raged, it became evident that Mark was not prepared for the fury of a woman who had finally found her voice. The air was charged, and every word felt like a nail being driven into the coffin of their marriage. "You manipulated everything," Emily exclaimed, tears glistening in her eyes. "You made me doubt myself." With each revelation, Mark's facade crumbled, revealing the selfishness beneath. I stood in the living room of my once happy home, the air thick with tension. The final confrontation had served its purpose, but I still felt the weight of everything that had transpired. Mark's eyes, filled with arrogance, haunted my thoughts. He had always thought he could manipulate me, but now something had shifted inside me. I was ready to reclaim my life. The following day, I found myself preparing for the court hearing. The reality was both exhilarating and terrifying. "You can do this, Emily," my mother reassured me, her voice a soothing balm as I paced in the kitchen. "You have the proof, you know what he's done, and it's time to hold him accountable." I nodded, though I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. The footage from the hidden camera played in my mind like a broken record, a cruel reminder of Mark's betrayal. I could still hear the muffled laughter of him and Lauren, their intimate whispers echoing in the hallways of my memory. It was maddening. "I can't believe I ever trusted him," I muttered, the bitterness sharp on my tongue. "Remember, you're not alone in this. The truth is on your side," my mother replied. I took a deep breath, trying to absorb her words. When we arrived at the courthouse, I was surprised by how small it felt, just a room filled with wooden benches and a long table. But the stakes were high. As I sat in the waiting area, I spotted Mark and Lauren across the room. They were whispering together, their faces strained. Just looking at them ignited a fire within me. Emily, my lawyer, Mr. Harris, approached with a reassuring smile. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said, forcing a smile. He nodded and led me to the courtroom, where I took a deep breath as I stepped inside. The judge entered, and I felt the weight of authority settle over the room. As the proceedings began, it was as if time slowed down. One by one, witnesses were called, dropping hints of Mark's manipulative behavior, his dismissive attitude towards me, and his repeated infidelities. It felt liberating to see the truth unfold before the court. When it was my turn to take the stand, I felt a mix of nerves and determination wash over me. "Emily, do you swear to tell the truth?" the clerk asked. "I do," I replied, heart pounding in my chest. I recounted everything, how I discovered the affair, how the hidden camera revealed their betrayal, and how Mark had always used my insecurities against me. I could see the judge's interest piqued, and it gave me strength. "This man tried to manipulate me and tear me down," I declared, my voice shaking but firm. As my testimony concluded, Mark's attorney stood up, trying to twist the narrative. "Emily, isn't it true that you were aware of your husband's friendships with Lauren?" "I was aware of friendships, yes, but not of this betrayal," I responded, feeling the fire in my gut flare up again. With every question they threw at me, I fought back with the truth. When the judge finally ruled in my favor, I felt an overwhelming rush of emotions. Relief washed over me, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of freedom. The day of the hearing arrived, and I felt a whirlwind of emotions. The courtroom, filled with wooden benches and a solemn atmosphere, seemed to amplify my anxiety. My heart raced as I sat beside my attorney, Karen, who had become a steadfast ally in my fight for justice. I glanced at Mark, who appeared unnervingly calm, as if he had forgotten the pain he inflicted. "Just remember, Emily," Karen said softly, "you're in control of your story. Speak your truth." I nodded, taking a deep breath as I watched the judge enter the room. This was my moment. I had spent countless nights thinking about what I would say, rehearsing it in front of the mirror, reminding myself that I was worth more than the betrayal I had endured. When it was my turn to testify, I stood up, feeling the pressure of everyone's eyes on me. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady, "I want to share my story. I married Mark believing in a partnership based on love and trust, but what I found was deceit." Mark shifted in his chair, and I could see the annoyance etched on his face. "Here we go," I heard him mutter under his breath. I continued. "I discovered Mark was cheating on me with my sister-in-law, Lauren. I found out through a hidden camera I installed after Mrs. Caldwell had alerted me about mysterious visits. I couldn't ignore the signs. I watched as whispers spread among those present, and I felt a surge of confidence. After witnessing their betrayal, I decided to take control of my life. I changed the locks on my house and closed our joint account. I was no longer going to be a victim of their manipulation. The judge listened intently, and I felt the weight of my own words. Mark, you used to tell me that I was overreacting, that I was imagining things. You made me doubt my own instincts. I paused, looking directly at him. But I see clearly now. You and Lauren's actions were deliberate, and they forced me to fight for my independence. The room grew silent as I leaned into the painful memories. When I confronted you, Mark, you tried to twist my words. You acted as if I was the one ruining our marriage. But the truth is, you chose to betray the very foundation of our relationship. As I spoke, the truth hung in the air like a palpable force, pushing back against the lies Mark had spun. The judge nodded, seemingly understanding the gravity of the situation. I felt a mix of anger and relief as I recounted each detail of their emotional manipulation. Your Honor, I want to emphasize that I am not just a survivor of this betrayal. I am reclaiming my life. I deserve to move forward without the shadows of their deceit. I took another deep breath, my heart racing, but I knew I had to finish strong. I am here to seek justice, not just for me, but for anyone else who has suffered in silence. After I finished, I stepped down from the stand, feeling lighter, as if the burden had been lifted from my shoulders. The judge spoke to Mark and Lauren, warning them of the consequences of their actions. My heart swelled with triumph as I could sense the shift in the room. Emily stood outside the courthouse, the sun shining brightly, but the warmth felt distant. The air was thick with anxiety as she clutched the folder of evidence close to her chest. Today was the day she would finally confront the truth and reclaim her dignity. She took a deep breath and glanced at her lawyer, Sarah, who gave her an encouraging nod. "You've got this, Emily. Just tell your story," Sarah said, her voice steady and reassuring. As they walked toward the entrance, Emily's heart raced. The weight of betrayal hung heavily on her shoulders, but she was determined to rise above it. Inside the courtroom, she felt a rush of adrenaline. The judge entered, and the atmosphere shifted. It was now or never. "Miss Larson, please proceed with your statement," the judge instructed, glancing over the papers. Emily stood up, her hands trembling slightly as she began to speak. "Your Honor, I'm here today because I've been betrayed by those I trusted the most. My husband, Mark, and my sister-in-law, Lauren, have manipulated and deceived me for far too long." She swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure. "I've gathered irrefutable evidence of their affair, and it's time to expose the truth." She could feel Mark's eyes on her, filled with a mix of anger and disbelief. Emily pressed on, sharing the details of the hidden camera footage, how she had discovered their secret meetings, and the moments that shattered her life. The courtroom was silent, save for the sound of her voice. "Mark promised to love and honor me, but instead he chose betrayal," she continued. "I've lost my home, my peace, and my trust in those I thought I could depend on. I'm here to reclaim my life for myself." As she concluded her statement, she saw the faces of the jury, their expressions serious. The judge nodded, acknowledging the gravity of what she had shared. Sarah stood beside her, ready to present the video evidence. "Your Honor, we have footage that clearly shows Mark and Lauren together," Sarah said, her tone firm. The video played, and the room filled with gasps as Emily watched the betrayal unfold on the screen. The fight within her ignited, fueled by the reality of what they had done. After the video ended, Emily glanced at Mark. His face was pale, the arrogance he usually carried evaporating as he realized the impact of his actions. He looked at her with a mix of shame and fury. "You had no right to invade our privacy," he exploded. Emily stood her ground. "You lost that right the moment you chose to betray me. You made me feel like a fool, and I refuse to be one anymore." The tension in the room was palpable. After several hours of testimonies and cross-examinations, the judge finally spoke. "In light of the evidence presented and the testimonies heard, I'm ruling in favor of Emily Larson. You will no longer bear financial responsibility for Mark or Lauren's actions." Relief washed over Emily as tears filled her eyes. She had fought for her dignity, and now she could finally begin to heal. Outside the courthouse, Sarah hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. You did it." As she walked to her car, the burden of betrayal slowly lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and newfound freedom. As I walked out of the courtroom, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The sun felt different, like it was welcoming me back to life. I could hardly believe I had finally taken a stand against Mark and Lauren. The ruling gave me the freedom I had longed for, and in that moment, I felt a surge of determination to rebuild my life. The hallway buzzed with muted conversations and footsteps echoing off polished floors. I spotted my attorney, Sarah, waiting for me at the exit. She wore a smile that melted away the tension that had gripped me for so long. "You did it, Emily," she said, her eyes sparkling with pride. "You stood your ground. You showed them you won't be a victim." "Thank you for believing in me," I replied, my voice shaky but filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you guiding me." As we stepped outside, the fresh air enveloped me, a stark contrast to the suffocation I had felt in that courtroom. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, allowing the moment to sink in. I was free. Free from the lies, the deceit, and most importantly, free from Mark's control. Once I reached my car, I thought about how to move forward. I'd spent so long focused on surviving, but now it was time to truly live. I wanted to help others who had been through similar experiences, women who felt powerless and needed a voice. Later that evening, I sat at my kitchen table, a cup of chamomile tea steaming between my hands. I thought about Mrs. Caldwell and those weekly visits she'd warned me about. Perhaps it would be a good idea to reach out, share what I had learned, and create a support network for women in our neighborhood. I picked up my phone and sent a message to her. "Hi, Mrs. Caldwell, it's Emily. I'd love to talk about those visits you mentioned. I think it's time we come together and support each other." It didn't take long for her to respond. "Of course, Emily, let's meet up for coffee. I'd love to share some ideas." The thought of networking with other women filled me with hope. I knew how isolating my experience felt, and I wanted to change that for others. I envisioned gatherings filled with laughter, support, and empowerment, where we could collectively rise above our struggles. A few days later, I met with Mrs. Caldwell and a few other local women. We shared stories, tears, and laughter. I felt a connection building, a sisterhood forged in adversity. That night, I shared my story, and watching their faces light up with understanding was a moment I would cherish forever. "You're so strong, Emily," one woman said, wiping away a tear. "I wish I could be as brave as you." "You are brave," I replied, my heart swelling. "It takes courage to share your story. We're in this together." As weeks passed, I organized more meetings and began to see our group thrive. We discussed legal resources, emotional support, and self-care strategies. Each gathering left us feeling empowered, and slowly I found healing within my own heart. I was no longer just a woman scorned. I was a survivor, a beacon of hope for others. It felt incredible to turn my pain into purpose.